Big story we are tracking this hour. US Supreme Court has cleared Mumbai attack convict Rana's extradition to India, dismissing his review petition against the move. He is accused of playing a major role in the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks in India. To discuss this further, joining us on the broadcast is Anil Kumar Trigunayat. He is a former Indian ambassador. Sir, first of all, a very warm welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Now, how do you react to this? What's your assessment says to begin with?
Well, I think that all the tricks that he tried to avail as per the legal procedure in the United States after his arrest, he has gone through them. And finally, the evidence that the NIA and India presented has been upheld by the Supreme Court. And as per our 1997 extradition treaty, they are permitting him now to go back to India. As you know, been given about 14 years imprisonment, and once he comes here, further investigations will reveal that what he, along with David Headley, were actually responsible for wrecking and for providing all the information, because he had also stayed in the same hotel, in which, and just a few days before the events, these dastardly attacks happened in Mumbai.
All right. Sir, do you also see this decision as a big win for India, and why?
Well, I think this is a big win because India has stood its ground. It has already, we know that this will also probably now allow the United States to understand the complexity of it, and also pressure Pakistan to come clean on the other evidence that India has presented to them, because they are the ones who have been actually perpetrating these crimes, supporting these terrorists from there, or terror groups from Pakistan. So I think India has been able to successfully uphold its stance and the investigations, and adequate evidence which has been acknowledged by the Supreme Court and the other courts in the United States has already been considered, and due extradition has been granted accordingly.
Definitely. This also indicates India's zero tolerance towards terrorism. Do you reckon that?
Well, India has followed this policy, and not only that, I mean, if you remember that India is also suffering from terrorism for over 4 decades, because our western neighbor Pakistan has been continuing to follow terrorism as an instrument of its foreign policy against India, bleeding 1,000 cuts and whatnot. At the same time, over time, we have seen that their ironclad friend China has also helped all these Lashkar-e-Taiba and various other groups by putting a technical hold at the UN Committee 1267 Committee in the United Nations. And this year, Pakistan is also part of the UN Security Council non-permanent seat, holding the non-permanent seat. So I think that this is time, this exposes the Pakistani designs, frankly, and hopefully now they will take some lesson from this, that 26/11 really happened, and that Pakistani terrorists who are being supported by them are there, they have admitted to it, and now it's time for them to deliver themselves from these kind of accusations that the government of India and the international community is making against them, that they are the harbors and havens of terrorists.
Sir, now that Rana will be extradited to India, I want to ask you that, according to you, how much time will it take, for him to be brought to India, and also what happens next?
Well, I think that there is a procedure which will take place. Now the court orders have been issued. It will depend on the local authorities, how soon they are able to hand over to the Indian authorities, or they will themselves like to bring him here and hand over in India. So we'll have to see how it works out. Secondly, he's also a Canadian citizen. I think that complication also needs to be addressed. Once he comes to India, obviously he's already been given a jail for 14 years now, so that will continue. At the same time, it will allow the Indian authorities to undertake further investigation about his connection, because he has been denying any hand. But he has been close to David Headley. He is the one who helped him get a long-term visa, with which David Headley was able to come here. And he has been close to one ISI major. So I think that there are evidences which are there. Only thing is one has to once again do that. Plus, he gets the justice must be served upon him, and that is what will happen, that he'll undergo the prison sentence here.
Definitely, sir. If I talk to you about the chronology of India's request for Rana's extradition, then it will be on December 4, 2019. Specifically, India submitted a diplomatic note, in fact, to US to extradite Rana. And on June 10, 2020, India filed a complaint seeking the provisional arrest of Rana with view towards extradition. The Joe Biden administration that time, sir, in US supported Rana's extradition to India. Does it also speak something about the India-US relations and how the requests are being heard?
Well, we have an extradition treaty between the two countries that was signed in 1997. But as you know, in the beginning, the lower courts had given him the jail term, but at the same time for the crime against a Canadian post, which was a Canadian journal, which was posted something. And then thereafter, that was the reason, but not necessarily their hand in the 2008. That's when it took longer for us to provide the evidence. Once again, as you mentioned, the chronology, and that was given. And India and USA are global comprehensive strategic partners. Both are against terrorism, and both wants to approve terrorism.
But sir, as far as the extradition treaty is concerned, there are some conditions attached to the extradition treaties whenever and wherever they are signed.
Well, of course, there are treaties. Treaties also take into account various humanitarian dimensions. They take into account the conditions of the various kinds of things which each state. And since they are signed after due consideration, that means they are already prima facie agreed to that the extradition will take place. So conditions are there. Those conditions will continue to be complied with. India is not the first time getting the extradition done. So we are aware about that, and these negotiations take very long. In fact, and arduous negotiations. I have myself entered into several treaties like that, and I know that it is every sentence, every para is very carefully drafted in this, so that there is no scope for misuse or abuse by either side.
Can you explain a bit how is it done?
Well, for example, like the person, when he is identified, you need to provide incontrovertible evidence which should be verifiable, that the due legal process has been followed in your country and the proper investigations have been done, which are not just hearsay, and there are sufficient evidences. So those evidences, how they will be done, what kind of impact they'll have, what will the kind of legal procedures that will follow. So it is a prolonged procedure, even as you have seen that it has taken us nearly 5-6 years to get him now at this stage.
Yeah.
Because then the person can go to their country, wherever they are resident, and will go through that process. And that allows it. But the government of the day may be committed to it, but the judicial process has to be followed. And that applies to both sides.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining in on the broadcast.